Okay, so making a little bit more progress on the Dadillac. So I didn't really get a whole lot done last night because I was working on a broken exhaust bolt. And there's my little collection, you know, just doing the welding, the washer and nut on trick. I was able to twist it out actually a little bit with just using, like, stacking up the weld on it and then using a vice grip and getting it out. But what ended up happening was I was using a channel locks and I broke this off inside the head. So it was sticking out like a stud, and then I ended up breaking it off, and it was about 2 or 3 threads deep into the head. But I eventually got it out after I took like a 1/2 inch drill bit, or I think it was a 1/2 inch, it was a big one, and went around here and basically kind of drilled out and took some material away from a large section around the stud so I could get in there deep enough to weld it. Otherwise it just kept snapping off because I wasn't able to get enough material on. So I just used a drill bit, kind of went around it and took some more material off, and then it worked pretty good. So there's the ugly boy right there, so I'm going to wrap that up. I did get the intake off, so I'll probably clean that. There's a bunch of seeds and stuff up there from a mouse, a rat, or something. And I know there was an animal living in here at one point because I did have an electrical issue with the truck probably 3 years ago, 4 years ago. I found a bunch of chewed up wires underneath the fuse box. So they were like completely chewed through, and was able to fix all that stuff. But I know there was an animal in there, confirmed by the seeds, if the chewed wires weren't already confirmation enough. So here's the intake. Just a regular old leaky oil LS intake. So if you're not familiar, a lot of this is just from the PCV setup, because it's always drawing vacuum in from the crankcase. So a lot of it just kind of sits in the intake. So what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to take the fuel rail and injectors off. I'm going to take the evap purge solenoid out because I'm going to put the intake air temp sensor in there. I'm just going to leave this map sensor in because this is a factory 1 bar. So I'm going to leave the map sensor in there. I did buy a brick style 3 bar. So I ordered that thing. I'm probably just going to pull the one off the Ranger if I need it in the next couple days before it comes, because I have the same style on the Ranger. And then I'll work on setting up some vacuum lines. So I'll probably use the top one here because I'm not going to be reusing the PCV system. So I'll probably use that for vacuum and start working on all that stuff. Okay, next thing I'm going to be doing is taking the tank out because I want to change the fuel pump. So I took the fuel pump relay out. I just jumpered it out with a wire. And I use one of those little Dorman 3/8 bundies, just a straight piece. And then a line going down to a tank right here. Watch out, bud. Line going down to a tank, and then we'll run this out. If we have to swap the can out, we'll swap the can out when we get there, but that's how I'm going to do that, just so it's a little easier to drop the tank. Alright, so I got the tank all empty now. This is that fitting I was telling you about, that 3/8 bundy. It's just a straight piece. I can't remember what I got this from, if I bought this thing, or I know you can buy these lines. They're a little bit longer. You can use them for different stuff. So I think I just cut it off of something else and kept it. But it's nice to be able to use for stuff like that. All right, so I got the gas tank out now. Didn't take too long. I'm getting pretty good at it after a couple bad fuel pumps in this thing. So evap purge solenoid hose. If you remember when I was talking about the solenoid earlier, I was talking about taking that out for intake air temp. So that's how you normally do it, or that's a good spot for it. But what I think I'm going to do, just to keep the function of the evap purge solenoid, because I want to try to keep as much stuff working as possible. I'm glad I thought of this before I put the temp sensor in there. I'm just going to leave this there, and I'm probably going to get a threaded intake sensor, and then I'll put it in the intake, like on the intercooler piping. So I don't really have any piping in there. Well, there's a little bit there, so I might be able to make that work. Or what I could probably do is just keep the MAF over here plugged in and not use the MAF function, but still have the intake air temp. So it's pretty much going to be the same temp as the air that's getting sucked in. Should be close enough. So I guess close enough until we get something else figured out for it. Alright, so I'm going to take this basket apart. We're going to try to put the Walbro in it, Walbro 450. And I think what I want to try to do is keep some of these original tubes. I did order some of this corrugated or convoluted tubing to go from here to the pump. I want to try to reuse this whole basket because this is the filter and the regulator, everything in here, and then go out the top of the factory hat. So that's kind of the goal. I did start to pop it apart. I pulled the level sensor off just because I don't want to bend that thing. And I did unplug some stuff already. So that should all be kind of self-explanatory. So I'm going to take the filter off the bottom here. So this filter clips in. And I think this actually fits the bottom of the Walbro. It should be pretty close. Should be interesting. These are actually pretty close in size. So it'll be interesting to see if that thing just fits right back in there. That's kind of my goal. So I did get the hair dryer out. I'm going to use it kind of like a heat gun. I'm going to try to melt some of these lines off, or at least soften them up so I can get the stuff out of there. Or see if it works. Alright, so this line here I ended up just cutting off. It doesn't have that line for the top of the pump, and I'm really not even sure what that does at the bottom of it. So I cut it off, and then I pulled the pump out of the top hole here. So it'll give me a little bit more room to work with. And see if it's even possible to kind of like melt this thing off of there. If not, I'll just cut it off. So ideally, what I would like to try to do is heat that thing up, pull it off, and pop it right back on the other one. Okay, that didn't really work at all. So probably not getting hot enough. I don't have a heat gun. I could just go buy one, but I think I'm gonna try boiling water. I think that's one other method of working with this material is boiling water. So I'm gonna do that. I'll take it in the house, boil it up, have for dinner, see if we can get it off. If not, I'm just going to cut it off because I do have another piece of this tubing coming in the mail today. All right, so while I'm working on the water to boil, I'm going to get going on these injectors. I have the decapped injectors, 8 of them already. I did have them on like a LS1 rail at one point, so I have the caps on them. These are originally in the Ranger, and they were all flow matched originally. These were from when I originally built the injector flow bench. I did that on a video. I built a little flow rig. I bought a little frequency generator off eBay for like $3. And you could adjust the frequency that it would pulse at, so you could do wide open or pulse the injectors. And I just wanted to flow my own injectors and get them close, and actually worked pretty good. And if you're familiar with Hunter at Hunter Tuned, he actually bought that injector flow rig from me, and he flowed all kinds of injectors, and it seemed like it worked very well for him. And if you guys are using those injectors, it doesn't seem like there's very many complaints. So it seems like the rig worked pretty good. But unfortunately, he lost it in the garage fire that he had. So, oh boy, gas everywhere. Let me get a, oh boy, let me get a rag. I almost should have expected that, huh? All right, so we'll do this. You guys have probably heard me talk about that before. I think it's always impressive how much fuel comes out of these rails. It's interesting. Probably because it's something that you don't want to spill. So every bit that you do spill sucks. And it just seems like it never wants to stop coming out. So yeah, he unfortunately lost the rig in the garage fire. But that's the least of the worries, really. So they're getting that thing back going again. Sometimes these things are pretty hard to get out. So I'm probably going to do a set of snake eater injectors eventually in this truck. I don't think the decaps are going to be in there for very long. So I do want to turn this thing up a little bit. But the 7875 on there should do pretty good. I don't have an intercooler, so I'm really not going to go crazy with this thing yet. Let's see, got a couple O-rings stuck. So these should be okay. We'll find out. And as I get farther and farther into this build, or I guess as I think about it a little bit more, I'm becoming increasingly excited with the build. So I think I can talk about my plans a little bit, or what's in my head. I usually just put them in my mouth and suck on the O-ring. That's how I lube them up and put them in. So I think I'm gonna retire the Ranger from like go fast stuff. Come on. And you guys can kind of tell probably that I'm really up in the air. I'm back and forth a lot with what I want to do with the Ranger. But overall, that truck, I'm not going to turn it into like a race truck, so it's not going to have a cage, and it's a truck that I'm going to keep. You guys have probably heard this story 100 times. So, pardon me, I posted it on the A21 Bravo Facebook page. If you guys aren't members there, go check that out. I post like pictures and stuff, projects that I'm working on, or talk about stuff that I don't always put into the videos on there. So I posted this over there that I'm thinking about pulling some of the stuff out of the Ranger and kind of retiring it back to a driver and maybe just leaving it NA for a little while. And that would allow me to pull the turbos, because I have the 6762 VS Racing mirror image turbos in the truck right now. So I'm kind of thinking about putting the mirror image turbos on the Escalade and doing twins like over winter, and then Terminator 4L80 trans brake everything in the Escalade, because I'd be more willing to cage this thing if it ever came that far, or try to make it go fast depending how the channel likes it. If people are actually excited about it, I'd be willing to do a little bit more, and it wouldn't really cost me a whole lot. And we'd get a whole cool twin turbo build over winter with the Escalade. This O-ring kind of looks like crap, so I think I'm going to cut that O-ring off and put a different one on. So I think that might be my direction, is take everything out of the Ranger, all the turbos off of it, and put them in here after we test out the single turbo with the 4L60. I'd like to maybe, I don't know, do a couple draggy pulls or something because the tracks are closed, and get it on the dyno. Maybe see if we can squeak out 500 and then rip it apart. This one's not gonna want to come out, is it? Come on, baby. Yeah, this one's really hard. All right. So maybe we can squirt out 500 out of this thing and then do a little bit of a build over winter. I don't know what you guys think about that, because it really wouldn't, like I said, it wouldn't really cost me much. I have most of the parts, and then I could just put the 4L80 back into the Ranger, keep the Terminator on it, I think, because I don't really want to pull all that stuff out, and leave it NA for a while, and then I can leave it as like an NA driver, and it still had the 6-liter in it, so cam 6-liter, and you could still take it out on the lake, and I still have the tires for it, so you could do, you know, ice racing and fun stuff with that thing, and kind of put everything in here, and then see what we can do with this. So I'm just feeling like I'm kind of at the point where maybe it's just time to retire the Ranger, and then I'd like to go more towards maybe restoring it, I guess. because it's kind of beat up a lot, and I did do the Lambo doors on it when I was a kid, when I was 16. So like the fenders are cut out, and the hinges are basically welded back on. So I'd kind of like to maybe make that thing nice again and drive it. And then this thing, wouldn't really care much about it. And then eventually you could sell it and move on to a different project. So that Ranger was my grandpa's truck. That's gonna stay with me regardless. So I'm thinking maybe like just try to make that thing, turn that thing back into a nice daily driver, something that's gonna stay around the family. And then this thing, we can just have fun with it. And eventually we'll dump it, someone else can buy it, and we'll do a different project. Let's go check on that fuel pump. Well, if I'm being honest, it didn't work. So I boiled it for like a couple minutes and it was still hard. I tried ripping it, pulling it off, and then I just held it over the heat, and that actually melted enough to get it off, but then it kind of boiled the plastic. So I'm just gonna cut it off, and then when my other one gets here, we will hope it was the right size that I ordered, and if not, I'm just gonna crimp some like 3/8 fuel line over it. We'll just do it that way. So I know I probably could have just did that right away from the beginning and not mess with it, but I'm kind of just experimenting right now. I mean, like, I know what will work. Just throw some other line on it, some rubber line, but trying something different than I've done in the past. So I just gotta be real careful because there's all plastic underneath it. There we go. All right, so that should work out pretty slick though, I think. So the piece that I ordered was 9mm by 210 millimeters. So that's about a little over 8 inches. And this piece was about 6 or 7 inches. So it should have an extra inch. And I should be able to put it right on here. Let's test the fit of the Wally inside here. I think it's gonna fit pretty good. With the little rubber boot. It fits pretty decent. It doesn't go all the way in. Let me try. Let's see. Yeah, so the base is a little bit bigger. So the Walbro does have this little nub on the back side there. You can see that. So I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna chop these pieces off, the clips, and then I'm gonna drill a hole for this little nub so it'll slide on nice and tight. And then I'll be able to retain the filter and then just kind of slam that thing in. So I cut those little things off, the little clips, and then this does fit inside there, and it holds it on already. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark out a little spot. I'm just going to try to press it in so I can make a little mark where I need to drill. And I kind of estimated the size of the drill bit. I'm going to be careful not to poke all the way through, obviously. So let's test that and see. I think the hole is in the right spot. Oh boy. Ooh, that actually worked pretty good. You see how tight that was on there? Or do I gotta go a little bit deeper? I might not even have to go deeper. I'm worried if I go deeper, it's gonna go all the way through and then slam it through the bottom side of the sock. So I don't think I need to do that. I'll press it on. That actually works pretty good. Look at that. Yeah, that's in there pretty snug. So basically just took that little spot and drilled a hole. That's perfect. And if you look at how that thing sits in there, it's like perfect. Flush right with the bottom. Things like almost in the exact same spot that it was. All right, so right on time. It said Amazon Prime. It said 5 o'clock at... You're falling over, holy cow. So Amazon Prime, it said 5 o'clock at 4:58. I heard E40 in the Amazon truck. He was bumping E40 in the neighborhood. Came, brought me my packages 2 minutes before the estimated delivery time. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go in the house, I'm going to boil this again, and then I'm going to slam it on. So this is the 9mm size. Should be pretty good to just get it like kind of warm and slam it over. All right, so I do have it on there. I did get it on. It's over the first barb and slightly over the second barb. So I let it boil for probably 10 minutes and then put it on, and then I crimped it. So, I mean, it's on there tight. I couldn't pull it off before the crimp, so it should be good. But I think just to be sure on this one, I'm gonna try to shave down the barbs a little bit just so I can slide it on. So I did put some Vaseline actually on the spout to help slide it over, and it still kind of got hung up. It's on there enough though. I feel like it should be pretty good. So I'm going to trim these barbs down a little bit and do the same thing, boil it, slide it on, and crimp it, and then we should be good. So I'll show you what that looks like afterwards, and then I'll start working on putting everything back in. I'm still waiting on an oil line to put the intake back on, and then pretty much after that it's done. I got to put the wideband in. So not a lot of stuff going on. So probably by the time you see this video, maybe another day or 2 days, I should be able to go drive it, depending on when that part comes. I did get my map sensor today, so that'll go on there. And yeah, it should be pretty close. I'm just waiting on this part that I ordered like a week ago. It's coming from California, and I don't know where it is because it hasn't updated the shipping in like 4 or 5 days. So probably USPS. Let's do this. Okay, so I just realized this now. This is actually kind of nice. This whole thing comes out of here. I knew that. There's a clip on it. That comes out, but then this section also comes out. So that'll help a lot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some sandpaper. I'm just going to sand the barbs down a little bit. And yeah, I started sanding it, and then the thing started twisting inside there. Oh, that looks pretty good. So sand that down, lube it up, and jam it in. So you probably should have went with a 10mm. This is a 9mm, and it's like that size. So a 10mm probably would have just slid right over, and then you could clamp it. But I'm gonna go boil this turd. All right, so that one actually worked perfect. It's all the way on. And I think that was just what it needed to sand that little, just the tips off. Now I'll take this thing and tighten it down. Just gonna use my little cutter here. Put it over both of the barbs and then clamp it down. Perfect. Now we have a near factory looking line Start to assemble the thing now. See how close we can get this thing to actually looking like it's supposed to be there. So this is going to have to go back in here. Maybe I'll wait and I'll put it back together first. So that looks like that. This one goes here, so this guy I'm going to swing back over this way. Alright, so there it is. Wally World inside the factory little basket thing. I think this turned out actually pretty decent, so I'm kind of interested to see how that turned out, how it works, because I've never done it that way before. So there you go. So like I said, still waiting on that oil fitting, then I can put the intake back on. So off camera I will just be putting that stuff back in, and hopefully next video will be maybe like a drive or something like that.